Hey, let's see. I should have a sweet. There it is. Awesome. So it is an honor to be here. I'm going to begin by sort of laying a foundation, right? So I come from the Jewish tradition, and the Jewish story is one of survival and exploration of the world through the combination of both faith and imagination. So a lot of these definitions of things are my own, right? There's the sort of stereotype, 2 Jews, 3 opinions, 1 rabbi, 4 opinions. So I may change my mind by the end. We'll see what happens. So there are 3 main elements to Judaism, right? So we have God first, and we relate to God in different ways. So there's, of course, prayer, right? There's ritual, there's mitzvot, and there's relationship. And it's very focused on the here and now. Our relationship with God, we're not worried about the future. We do look to the past, but we're very concerned with what's going on right now. How do we relate to the divine? How do we relate to the world around us, to one another, to the people in our lives, and to ourselves? So in this way, our relationship with God is very embodied. It's very physical because we have to do, not just believe or think or say certain things. We have to actually do to be in relationship. The next sort of pillar is the Torah or the Pentateuch or the 5 books of Moses. So that's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And each year we read the entire Torah over and over again. So we begin at the beginning with the creation story, which we'll talk about in a minute, and we end with the, spoiler alert, death of Moses atop Mount Nebo, and then we start over again. So we never quite get to the promised land, right? You have to go to the book of Joshua to get there. That's not part of the Torah. So one of the things that Judaism teaches is that the promised land isn't a destination. The promised land is the journey itself. And then we have peoplehood, right? So there's this understanding in Jewish tradition that we are a unique people. You've probably heard like, oh, the Jews are the chosen people, right? And that's, there's sort of a misconception there, right? The Jewish people aren't chosen because we're special in any way. It's because we have a special responsibility to interact with our world responsibly. Everyone in Jewish tradition, Jewish or not, is inherently good, and everyone gets to go to heaven at some point, at least according to Jewish tradition. But we have an extra responsibility to live through Torah. So a little bit of history, right? So foundations in Torah, the entire book of the foundation of the Jewish people is a story of imagination. It's this beginning from creation through enslavement in Egypt, through wandering in the desert for 40 years, and really trying to figure out who we are as a people, how we want to interact with our world, and how we want to be in relationship with our God. And then as we get to the rest of Tanakh, so we get to the prophets and the writings, we begin to imagine a better world, right? A lot of the prophetic writings, Isaiah, there's a very famous one, Lo yisagoy al goy charev, lo yimadu al milchama, right? Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, nor shall they learn war anymore. There's a recognition as early as the prophets and the writings, and actually even back in Torah, there's this recognition that we need to pursue a better world. And then we have the rabbinic writings figuring out how we want to interact with our world in the modern day. So imagination in the Jewish experience, we have prayer, ritual, and holiday as vehicles for imaginative identity formation. The Amidah, which is our standing prayer connecting the present with the past and hope for a better future. The Passover Seder, reliving the story of our ancestors every year. And Sukkot, which is a pilgrimage holiday where we actually celebrate the harvest, and our prayers change from praying for dew to praying for rain. We have 2 different types of Torah. We have the written Torah, the texts as we have them today, so Torah, and then the oral Torah, Midrash, imaginative rabbinic stories that fill the gaps of the written Torah. So at the very end of the Torah, when Moses dies on Mount Nebo, it says, he dies al pi Adonai, by the mouth of God. Weird. So the rabbis say, no, that was on purpose. We read the Torah in a cycle every year. So as Moses breathes out his last breath, God breathes that breath in and turns around. And in turning around in that cycle of Torah, that ruach, that is that spirit, that breath, that wind that is over the face of the water in the creation story, is actually a combination of God and Moses, of God and humanity. The imaginative work of creation, of doing, between us and God constantly. Judaism is very embodied, right? We have a special relationship with food, with ritual items. There's choreography of prayer. If you ever happen to be in a synagogue, you'll see some bending and bowing for certain things out of respect for God. And we have special objects for holidays. And then we honor and learn from the past to build the future that we deserve. So we need to have some courage, right? In each generation through the Jewish experience, that generation has to have the courage to imagine a better future and to fight for it. And we learn tradition to find new ways of relating to our world, to one another, and our experience of the divine. Each generation, we all face different challenges, and it is up to us to have the courage to imagine that we can tikkun olam, that we can repair our world and leave it a little bit better for the next generation. And finally, inherent goodness, right? So in the creation story, if we look all the way back to Genesis, everything is inherently good. God creates everything through speech, and God says, this is good. God creates the human being, and God says, this is very good. The first thing in the entire Bible that is bad is loneliness. God says, it is not good for this person to be alone. And we know that there's responsibility in relationship, right? Relationship can be beautiful and uplifting, but it can also be tough. I mean, if we think of Cain and Abel, the first couple of brothers, one kills the other. There's deep responsibility when we are in relationship with one another. God knows the pain of loneliness. We know the pain of loneliness. And it is through love and connection and imagination that we can build beautiful relationship with one another and with our world. And finally, a little quote from Pirkei Avot, the ethics of the ancestors: you are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist from it. Thank you.